Hello, and welcome to the third installment of this Blender Smoothie tutorial series on creating a Christmas tree in Blender. In this part, we're going to be creating the lights. So we're going to get started by, first we're going to add a plane. That may seem a little weird, but basically what we're going to do is, let me move that over, go into edit mode, delete those bottom two vertices, and select this top part, subdivide it, probably, say, maybe even more than that, we'll say 40 times. Maybe even a little more than that, we'll do 50. And let's press tab to go back into object mode, press Shift Control Alt C, and select Geometry to Origin, just so it centers this line here. Now basically what we're going to do is we're going to put a twist in this, basically make it a spiral shape, and then we're going to scale it up along the z-axis, and this will basically be the path curve that our cabling for the lights will follow along. It's not a curve yet, but we're going to convert it to one once we're done editing it, because in this case it's a little easier to do this with a mesh than it is with a curve. So press tab to go back into edit mode, and select this vertex all the way to the left. Turn on proportional editing, I already have it on. Make sure it's on just the default proportional editing, none of these other options, otherwise it won't work quite as well. And press R to rotate. It's clearly way too big. And you want to scroll with your mouse wheel a little bit until you get to somewhere right around there, so that all of the vertices are inside the circle, but they're not really far inside the circle. So just something like that. And then you want to swirl it around like this, and keep swirling it, until you have something sort of like this, and that'll work. So this is the spiral pattern we're going to be using. Clearly we have to smooth this out a little bit. If we press tab to go back into object mode, it looks really blocky, or really weird. So let's just come over here to the modifiers panel and add a Subsurf Modifier. Maybe increase that to 2. Turn on optimal display. I'm not sure that does anything since this is an infinitely thin line, but maybe further use. Okay. So the next thing we want to do now is we want to give it some height, because right now it's just a completely two-dimensional shape. So we want to stretch it out so it's tall too, so that it works with the shape of the Christmas tree. So press tab to go back into edit mode, make sure that this vertex is still selected, and you still have proportional editing turned on. Go into front view, scroll out a little bit. We can use the tree here as a comparison for how high we want this to be. And just gonna move it up to something like that. Yeah, that looks about right. Clearly we're gonna have to scale it up a little bit, so press tab to go back into object mode, S to scale it up. Alright, the proportions are a little bit off. It's sort of sticking out a little bit on the top. It's kind of the way we want it, but it's sort of stuck in the middle of the tree down here at the bottom. So let's press tab to go back into edit mode. Maybe, ooh, it's kind of messy. Okay, we'll just leave it like that. Select one of these vertices along here, just something in this general area. Maybe that one, we'll say. Let's do that one. And with proportional editing still turned on, press S for scale and Shift Z, so that it scales only along the S, or the X and the Y axes. Okay, it doesn't seem to be doing anything. Let me see. Oh, yeah, we had to increase the circle. Alright, so let's try that again. S, Shift Z. And we just want these little edges to basically come through. Something like that. Yeah, probably like that. Then we want to move it over a little bit since it was offset to begin with. So now we have something like that. Might want to do the same for up here too, because it's kind of sinking in a bit there as well. Okay. Maybe even a little more. That's good for now. Then clearly we're going to have to edit it on the side because the tree's leaning a little bit. So we'll rotate that a bit. Just something like that. Okay, that's good enough. We might edit it a little bit more later on, but for now that'll work. We also want to do something about this end here, because that's kind of weird, sticking out in a weird way. Maybe delete those last few vertices, and then, we'll turn off proportional editing for that, and sort of move in these vertices, kind of tuck them under the bottom of the tree, like that. And that'll work. We're not going to be seeing all angles of this anyway. Might want to turn on proportional editing again and maybe move that over a little bit. Yeah, that works. Okay. That looks pretty good. Go ahead and save before we go any farther. And basically what we're going to do next is we want to give this a little bit of depth so that it's not just an infinitely thin line. It may sound weird when I'm saying that, considering this is just going to be essentially a path curve ultimately. But basically we're going to be using the cloth simulator to sort of drape some parts of this over the branches a tiny bit, so it's not just perfectly smooth, raveling all the way up, and it sort of interacts with the branches a little more. So first of all, let's move these needles to another layer, because we'll just have this working with the branches. And let's select the tree branches there. Go over to the physics panel, and now it's already enabled. That was from earlier when I was working on it, but yes, basically enable collision in the physics panel. And what this will do is it'll allow anything else that we have physics properties enabled on, they'll basically react with this. They'll collide with it. Okay, so select the curve again. Or, it's not a curve yet, but it will be. And basically what we want to do from here is just give it a tiny bit of depth. So I'm going to press, it'll probably work better to do it this way. Press Alt-C and click Curve from Mesh. So we are going to convert it to a curve now, but we're going to convert it back, then back again. It sounds kind of weird, but it seems like a pretty efficient way to accomplish this. So we'll click on Full. That way when we add the thickness, it's not only filling half of the curve, but the entire curve all the way around. And we'll increase the bevel depth slightly. So as you can see, maybe you can see, maybe you can't. Let me zoom in really close here. We have a thickness now that wasn't there before. Basically, we have to do this because the cloth simulator that we're going to be using for this curve won't work unless there's some degree of thickness to the mesh. So, in light of that, I wonder... Yeah, it looks like you can't work with it when it's a curve. So we're going to convert it back to a mesh. Alt-C again. And enable the, sorry, not smoke, cloth physics properties. Okay, ensure you're on frame 1 before you go any farther, because it'll throw the entire simulation off if you're somewhere farther ahead. And all we have to do now is press Alt-A. And this is going to run really, really slowly. It might even be too slow on some computers for it to be worth it. If that's the case, I found that it typically works best just to go in and sort of manually edit the mesh to kind of give it these little random bumps and stuff so it's not perfectly smooth. But we don't want to let it go for too long. Just probably like that. When you're done, press Alt-A again to leave the animation. Don't press Escape, because then it'll just restart and you'll have to do it all over again. So now we have some nice variation there. This bottom part still looks kind of weird, but we can probably come back to that in a little while. Before we do anything else, we want to apply the cloth simulator. This way it'll just stay like that, in that form that it's in, for any frame in the scene. So it's not going to mess up anything if we jump around frames or go into edit mode on this or anything like that. Okay, so right now I'm going to see if I can clean up the bottom part of this a little more. Maybe we can just delete a lot of that, honestly. It looks kind of, yeah, maybe something like that. Delete those. Then kind of move that in. Whoa, turn off proportional editing. Move that in a little more. Forgot it has some thickness now. So, sort of tuck all those under the tree. And the needles will conceal that a little more too. That's good enough. Let's add another Subsurf Modifier really quickly, because there are some kind of weird looking sharp edges there. So just one like that to smooth that out even more. And now I want to convert this back to a curve, since we have more or less the shape that we're going for. First I'm going to go into edit mode one last time and turn on proportional editing and maybe fix this top part a little bit, because that seems to be moving kind of strange. There we go. Okay. In order to convert this to a curve, the first thing we're going to have to do is delete any thickness that this has. This has to be, again, an infinitely thin line. So we're basically undoing all the steps that we did to use the cloth simulator in order to convert it back to a curve. So press Tab to go into edit mode, and hold down Alt and right-click just at any area of this object. And it's going to select one of the two edge loops. Once you've selected that, you can just press X to delete, choose vertices, and now we're left with this infinitely thin line. Oh, no, wait, we're not. Sorry about that. It looks like it's a flat plane, but there are actually, I think 4 edge loops. So we'll do that 2 more times. X, delete the vertices, delete the vertices. Yeah, alright, there's the infinitely thin line. Okay. Now we can convert this to a curve. So press Alt-C and choose Curve from Mesh. And there it is, it's a curve. Now, it's kind of inconvenient to edit this, just a warning. So if you feel like you still have any more editing to do, it's typically easier to do that while it's still a mesh than when it's a curve. We could always go back later and edit it, but it's always best to get all that editing out of the way when it's still a mesh. So, okay. There's the basic shape of our lights that are going to be strung over the tree. Now I want to work on the actual light cables. Maybe we can, let's see here. I'm gonna kind of hide this just so we can see this a little easier. Basically, what we're going to do is create 2 cables, in a sense, and sort of twist them together. There are sort of 2 kinds of Christmas tree light cables. One of them is basically one regular cable. Then another one is like 2 cables twisted together. And that's the one that I'm going to be using. It looks a lot more interesting, and it's kind of fun to make. You can learn a lot while putting it together. So I'm going to go into another layer, maybe this one, it doesn't really matter. And we want to do first, make sure this is kind of centered, is add a circle. And we want to change the vertices from 32 to 5. Just as low as you can possibly get it without making it a square. And we can rotate it along the y-axis 90 degrees. Then duplicate this, Shift-D, right about there. Okay. Yeah, that works. You know, actually, let me delete that. I'm going to make this pretty much flat, just to make it a little easier to work with. Now we'll duplicate that, just like that. Okay. Now what we want to do is select both of these. That's Shift right-click to select multiple objects, and join them together. Control J. Now they're one object. Actually, I would like to press Shift Control Alt C, origin to geometry to recenter the origin, and then Shift S, selection to cursor, just so it's nice and centered there. Now what we want to do is extrude this to some sort of length. We're going to be using an Array Modifier and a Curve Modifier to disperse this across the path curve. So in edit mode, press E to extrude, and X, move it along the X-axis. That'll probably work. That looks about right. Maybe even, whoa, accidentally hit it there. Might move it ahead to there, actually. Okay, and now we just want to basically press Control R, scroll up with your mouse wheel, and add a bunch of edge loops like that. Make sure they have the same number of edge loops. Both of these sides do, because otherwise you'll run into some real problems trying to get it all to fit together with the Array Modifier. So press Tab to go back into object mode once you've done that. And we're going to add a simple Deform modifier. And we're basically just going to twist this, twist it around approximately 180 degrees. This is fairly easy to line up. Actually, you know what? We might be able to... Let's go ahead and add an Array Modifier first so we can match these up a little better. So, add an Array Modifier, and clearly we're going to have to change some of these settings here because right now it has the relative offset to X, I believe. So we want to get rid of that and change that to this bottom one here. There we go. Just so they're sequenced. And now we should be able to adjust the twist angle till they line up. They might not line up, actually. Oh, it's pretty close. There we go. Yeah, that's approximately the look that I'm going for. So you can see that's, yeah, I guess we'll just make it an even 360 degrees. Okay, so the last thing we want to do is click Merge on here, just so it merges those vertices. Can't tell if it actually did that or not. Okay, looks like it did. Basically what that does is it just merges the vertices on either end of these so that we don't have like duplicate vertices in the middle there. So it's all one continuous edge loop. Now what we want to do is add a Subsurf Modifier, maybe. Actually, let's smooth this first. I think adding a Subsurf Modifier might be too many polygons for the computer to handle. So for now, we'll just leave it like this. Okay. So the next thing we have to do is add a Curve Modifier. So this follows along the curve that we created for our tree right here. So I'm going to move this to this layer. We're still working on everything on the second layer. I forgot about that. I'm going to move that back later. This is way too big. Scale it down to maybe something like that. Probably be adjusting the scale later on. Something else we want to do really quickly is put the origin point of the curve at the end of the curve. So select this last curve handle right here, press Shift S, cursor to selected. That'll just put our 3D cursor there where the end of the curve is. Press Tab to go back into object mode, and Shift Control Alt C again, and choose origin to 3D cursor. And then we can center the 3D cursor after that. Just so that the origin point of the curve is at the end there, and that's where hopefully the mesh will start, and it'll just work its way up with the curve modifier. So let's add a curve modifier. First of all, I should probably name this. Just call it light curve. And select the light cables again. And come over here to the modifier panel and add a curve modifier. Then select, guess we didn't really need to name it because it's the only curve in the scene, but whatever. Okay, this is totally out of whack. I was hoping we wouldn't run into this problem. Alright, let's see here. We can move that now. Might want to move that up to there as a starting point. Where's the bottom of that? Right there. Okay. And while we're at it, let's press Control A and apply... Whoa. No. Never mind. I guess that's a bad idea. Let's add the curve modifier again. Alright, it's starting at the top now. It's kind of weird. Okay, well let me pause the recording for just a second while I try to fix this. So, be right back. Alright, well, it turns out, looks like I had to tweak the object origins a little bit more, and adjust the rotation and scale and whatnot too. So basically, I'm not sure if all of these worked or which ones of these things worked, but I had to apply the scale of the curve and the object, and basically had to clear the rotation of the object, then re-rotate it so that it was angled horizontally, and then position it in the center of the scene, and it worked. So, I'm not really sure what was up with all of that. Blender's curve modifier has always been kind of weird. If any of you are having any additional problems with that and can't solve it, then you could post a comment below and I'll see if I can figure out any other methods that might work to fix that. Anyway, with that solved, we can move on. It actually started from the top down, which went differently the last time I did it, but again, there's some weird things about Blender's curve modifier. The point is, it's working now. So we can increase the count, just like that, and it'll go all the way down the tree. Alright. Okay. Might actually be a little too big, so I'm gonna scale that down a little bit, then increase that some more. I don't want to increase it too much, because I don't want to give the computer too many faces to work with. But that'll do. That looks pretty good. So, okay. That's essentially it for the cables of the lights. Probably be a good idea to do a test render just to see how well we can see these. To do that, I'm going to give this a new shader with a really bizarre kind of bright pink purplish color like that, just so it stands out significantly and we can actually see it and see if it's maybe too far back behind the pine needles or anything like that. So let's go to the second layer and select this and move it back. And I guess, let me press Alt-H. Yeah, because I just hid the branches. Okay. So now we have that. I already lost it. Let me find it again. I think that's it. Yeah, there it is. No, that's the curve under it. There it is. Okay. Probably be best to change the viewport color so we can see it there too. So let's just do a really quick test render of that. In fact, let me press Shift-B to drag a little box around this so we're only rendering this. And we'll do a quick render and see how that looks. Alright. So, it's showing through pretty well. It's going to blend in a lot more when we change the color because I'm going to make it kind of a dark green. But it will still be somewhat visible. And that's what really matters because the lights will be on top of that, so we don't want the cable to sort of overtake or overpower the lights in this case. So that looks good enough. So I'll press Escape to get out of that, and I'm going to select that again, and we might as well just go ahead and set that up now. So we'll give it sort of a dark, kind of a dark green-blue color, Maybe not too blue, sort of a pine green. Maybe something like that, maybe even darker. Change the viewport color to match that. Let's change the viewport color of some of these other things too, just so we can sort of see them a little better. We'll make this kind of a mint green. Maybe select the tree trunk and branches, change that to something more like that. Alright, that looks good. Not really, but at least we can tell what all the parts are. Okay, so now that we're done with the cable, we can finally move on to the actual lights. We're going to be using a particle system to disperse the lights over the cabling. So basically all we have to do is model a couple little individual lights, just one, and we'll duplicate it and give them some different colors, spread them all over this. Some Christmas trees, of course, have just solid white lights or solid kind of yellowish lights. I'm going to try to change that a little bit and give it a couple different colors, and we'll see how well that goes. It may go terribly, in which case, if it does, we might just end up sticking with the regular white lights. But I am curious to see how multicolored lights would work on this. So let's go and do another layer right here and add another circle. Shift A, add mesh circle. We'll keep the default 5 vertices and go into edit mode. We'll press E to extrude, Z to go along the Z axis, move it up about that far, maybe even a little farther, something like that. Then extrude it again, scale that extrusion in, move that up a little bit, maybe even more like that. Extrude that up a tiny bit, extrude again, right click, press Alt M to merge the vertices at the center, move that up a little bit, and yeah, we'll extrude that and press Alt M to merge those vertices down there too. This is our basic light shape. I'm actually going to go into edit mode and add another edge loop right there, just so we can sort of smooth that out a little bit more. Maybe even add another one up there and kind of smooth that a bit. Okay, so that is our basic light bulb shape. Might want to move that up a little bit more. And basically what we're going to do to get the most realistic look out of this, warning, it is going to take a while to render, but it looks a lot better. Basically we're going to be giving this a glass material, and then we're going to be putting a little light inside of it. So basically we're going to have colored glass shells, that would be the bulbs, and then the actual sources of light will be inside them. So let me tweak this a little bit more. Maybe make it a bit taller, something more like that. That works. Alright. So let's add a new material. And we'll change the type to glass. And if we switch over to our rendered view right now, we can see that taking effect right there. Looks pretty... Let me see if shading it smooth will help. There we go. That's better. Okay. So it does look kind of blocky up close, but of course this is going to be tiny when we're viewing it with the other, in the context of the whole tree. So it looks pretty good right now for a glass bulb, but I'm actually going to split my view here, change this to the node editor, and I'm going to mix this with a diffuse shader, just so we can sort of add a little bit of, let's see, yeah, a little bit of an area that's, not so transparent. So it's not a completely transparent glass bulb, but it has some level of obscurity to it. So, alright, we have that. Let's go ahead and switch back to rendered view again. I'm going to lower that, though, to maybe 0.3, maybe even 0.25. And let's change the color of this diffuse to sort of a red, not super red, but something like that. And we'll do the same with this glass shader here. Might be a little too red. going to kind of back off on the red and the diffuse shader a little bit. Maybe something more like that. Okay. So that looks pretty good for a glass bulb. I want to tweak this a little bit more. Maybe scale that down a tiny bit and move that up a little more. Okay. So let's add a source of light inside it. I'm actually just going to use part of the bulb as the source, so I'm actually going to undo that little part we did there, delete the vertex. Hold down Alt and right-click that, select the edge loop, press E to extrude, scale it in, maybe E to extrude up a little bit, scale that in, E to extrude, E to extrude, and I'm just going to use this right here as a source of light. So let's add a new material. Now let me name these really quickly. Let's call this red glass. We'll call this light. And we'll change this type to emission, make that a little brighter, assign that. Now, if we render this, yeah, we've got a nice source of light in there. That's a little too thick for my taste. Maybe I can scale that in along the z-axis a little bit, or along the x and y-axis a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. We want to increase the strength a lot, though, to maybe something like 40, maybe even 50. We want to make it pretty bright. And then we'll go back to this, and I'm going to increase the roughness of this a little bit so that it's not perfectly transparent. Maybe even more than that, maybe 0.25. I like that. That works. Okay, so there's our first light. I'm going to make that slightly less red. There we go. Okay. Now we just have to duplicate this a couple times and give it some different colors. So press Z to go back into this view. Duplicate that. Give it a blue, green, yellow, and an orange. Well, we'll do a purple. Just give it some different colors there. So we'll make this blue glass and change these to a blue. Alright. And we'll make this green glass. We'll change this to a green. Maybe make it a little darker. It's kind of a bright green. Something more like that. And we'll change this to yellow glass. Make that yellow. Make that yellow. And purple glass. Make that purple. Alright. Okay, so there are our basic light bulbs. Now let me go press Z to go back into solid view here. The origin points are already in good spots. It's exactly where I wanted them, right there on the bottom. However, probably should have added a base to these before duplicating them. Let me take care of that really quickly. I'm just going to add another circle. Again, 5 vertices is fine. Scale it up a little bit. Move it up to right about there, maybe. Go into Tab, or press Tab to go into Edit mode. Extrude that down a little bit. Extrude it again. Alt-M to merge it at the center. We're just going to do something like that for now. And we'll select this top part, press E, and scale that in as well. Okay. No, we don't need that. There we go. That'll work as a base. Just I'll add a new shader for that. Maybe make it sort of a dark green, kind of like the color that we had for the cabling. Maybe make it a little bit brighter. Yeah, we'll keep it like that. Yeah, and we'll just join those two objects. And actually, let's name this, let's name it base. I don't know what else to call it. And we want to make sure, go into edit mode, make sure that origin point is at the base. So now I just want to select that, press Ctrl L to select linked, and duplicate it over to these other light bulbs. Alright, and we'll make that a separate selection by pressing P, selection, P, selection, P, keep going down the line. Alright, those are all selected. And we'll just join all of these. Go into rendered view to make sure that worked properly. Looks like it did. Okay. Oh, forgot about that. We will want to sort of move all these bases down a bit. Oops. Doesn't have to be exactly even. Just want to move them down a little bit so that they're not concealing the light bulb. Alright. And, oh man, now we have to reposition the object origins. Whoa. Shift S, cursor to selected, origin to 3D cursor. Really should have done this before duplicating all these, but I'm just going to fix it up now. Oops. Shift S, cursor to selected, origin to 3D cursor, and one more time. Okay. That's good enough. These are going to be really tiny, so I'm not going to notice any subtle differences in height. Alright. So now the only thing left that we have to do with these is group them, so that we can use them in a particle system. So select all of them and press Ctrl G, and we'll just name this group Lights. Alright, so that's all we have to do with the lights there. Now we can come back here to our tree. I'm actually going to hide the branches and the needles for now, and we can merge those windows, just so we can see what we're doing a little better. And now we come over here to the particle systems and add a new particle system. Change the type to hair, change the settings to advanced, and yeah, we're going to, actually let me remove that first. We're going to have to apply all these modifiers in order to get it to work. Because otherwise it'll only be applying these particles to one segment of the array modifier, which clearly won't work. So we'll go back to the particle systems and particle panel, whatever it's called, add a new particle system, and we'll change the type from emitter to hair, select advanced settings. We'll scroll down here, change the type from path to group, and find our lights group. And it looks awful. First of all, let's scale these down a little bit so we can see what we're doing a little better. Okay, this is just totally out of whack. Maybe if I select rotation, that doesn't help. Alright, they're all sort of angled in the wrong way. They're kind of laying parallel to the cable instead of perpendicular. Alright, so what we have to do then is we have to go over here and rotate these. Try rotating them along the y-axis first, see what that does. That's not it, so we'll rotate them back, -90. Maybe along the x-axis then. That's not it either. Along the z-axis, z90. No? Okay, it's not doing anything. It's not very helpful. Alright, now with rotation selected, let me try that again really quickly. Select RY90. There we go. That's what I was trying to get earlier. Okay, much better. Alright, so just make sure you have rotation selected before you rotate those. I'm going to scale these down even farther because they're still kind of big. Whoa, 0.008, not 0.08. Okay, so first of all, we have too many. At least I think. Might want to limit this to like 350 or something. Then might want to mess with some of these settings here, see how those would work. Maybe change that to random? No. Kind of grouping in weird spots, which I'm not really sure what to do with that. Kind of like them to be more evenly placed. The only thing is, these vertices aren't all evenly placed. Well, they are, but there are a ton of them. So since we have fewer particles than we do vertices, it's kind of not going to work to try to get them to follow along those. What if we turn off random? There we go. That helped a little bit. They're still kind of clumping together in some areas, but I think that'll work. It looks a lot more uniform than it did before. Alright, so one other thing I want to do really quickly is come back down here to the render panel and click Pick Random. That way Blender will just be picking random light bulbs instead of it cycling through a predetermined path. I think that's all we need to do for the lights then. Might want to add a couple more than that. That is looking kind of sparse. Maybe move that up to like 425, something like that. And, alright, let's bring back the branches and needles. And let's render this and see how it looks. We're going to have to increase the samples. To get rid of really all the noise, you're going to have to increase the samples a lot. I can tell this in advance because we're adding all sorts of new light sources with the particles, and it's just going to go crazy with noise. Clearly, I can only go so far when I'm recording a tutorial, so I'm just going to put this at around 150. And it's going to be pretty noisy, but hopefully we'll be able to get an overall view of what it's going to look like. Okay, so it's actually not quite as noisy as I thought it was going to be. Alright. Maybe I could make the lights a little bigger. They look kind of small. Okay, so we can get a pretty good idea of what these look like. It doesn't look like they're casting very much light on the tree, which I imagine could be because I'm not letting this render long enough. You know, might also have to do with the number of colors. I think for simplicity's sake, I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to simplify this to a simple red and green. Those are nice Christmas colors. Maybe that'll help simplify the overall light setup a little bit more. Check and see this again. Come over back here into the particle settings again and select cable there. And increase the size to 0.009. Make them a little bit bigger. And let's try that again. Just render that and see how that looks. May also have to increase the strength of the lights, because those might not be nearly strong enough. Okay, that looks a little better. Okay. Going to come back over here where my lights are, and I'm going to adjust, whoa, that's not what I meant to do, adjust the shape of the light bulb a little bit more. Maybe make it a little longer. See how that looks. I think that might work a little better in the grand scheme of things. Let's select that too. How's that size? That works, okay. Move that up. Alright, we'll try rendering that again. Guess with the lights, it's really just an issue of trial and error. Alright, that looks a little better. You can see they're casting a bit more light on the tree. Oh yeah, especially down in that area right there. So that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. It's nice and bright. You can see the lights are actually interacting with the tree branches a little bit. That looks pretty good. So ideally, in this case, you would render it for a lot longer than this, just because you can still see there's a fair amount of noise in there. But yeah, once you get past that, then it looks pretty good. Okay. That pretty much concludes this part of the tutorial series on creating the lights. Might actually also want to adjust the strength of our main light in there, because the tree's looking kind of dim compared to the rest of the lights. Maybe I'll just change the lighting setup overall. But as for this part of the tutorial, we're finished. And in the next part, I'm going to go over creating the base and the ornaments. So that's all. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something.